I think the first thing is, you have to want to be like an entrepreneur, right? You can't take random people and make them an entrepreneur. You have to want to be on your own. You have to enjoy the freedom and the risk and the upside that comes with it, and mitigate a downside as well. So the upside comes with the downside. You have to accept that, right? And you have to be comfortable with it. Secondly, right, you want to be on your own and you want to try things, right? You want to be constantly looking at problems and new solutions. So you want people who like that sort of process, where here's a new problem and here's a new solution. And lastly, the most important thing you have to do as an entrepreneur is you have to add value to your customers. And most people forget that.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Practical Founders Podcast, where every week we hear an amazing story from a serious founder who built a valuable software company and did it without big funding. I'm your host, Greg Head, and this week my guest is Dharshan Rangegowda, the founder and former CEO of ScaleGrid. ScaleGrid is a database as a service, DBAs product that helps database administrators and others building app and cloud platforms to configure, maintain, optimize that complicated database back end of things. He's a developer himself who sold to other developers and built a company that grew and sold eventually to a private equity, growth equity partner. And he tells the story of being a technical founder, growing the business, and eventually exiting the company. And now he's on to his next builder adventure. Hi, Dharshan. Welcome to the Practical Founders Podcast.
Hi, Greg. Thank you for having me here. I'm excited to be here.
Very excited. We met a couple of weeks ago in Park City, Utah at the Lighter Capital Summit. You sat across from me at dinner, and I got to hear some of your practical founder story. It's really amazing. We had fun that night with a whole bunch of practical founders there. You're in Silicon Valley these days.
Yes, I'm in Menlo Park right now.
Right in the center of it. And you're a Bootstrap founder right in the epicenter of global venture capital funding. Trillions of dollars, I guess, or billions, at least hundreds of billions within miles of you there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And yes, right.
And you can still do it this way.
Yeah, and you could still do it. Right. Okay. Right. So you're not carrying the flag, but you're still doing it. And you've already had one exit. Let's talk about your first company. I know you're working on a second company that isn't launched yet. Can't talk too much about that. But your first company was ScaleGrid. You left Microsoft to start that and grew it and you sold it. But what can you tell us about what ScaleGrid is and who it's for?
So ScaleGrid is essentially a database as a service platform, also called DBAS for all the tech geeks. So essentially, think of it as a platform that helps and makes it easy for you to deploy and scale your databases over time. People need to deploy their databases, they need to back it up, they need to monitor it, they need to upgrade it. So all of this requires specialized skills. And either you build an in-house team or you basically use software like ScaleGrid to essentially manage all these databases on the clouds, various clouds.
So all the software we use has database or databases behind it, right? And
Exactly.
Next to those databases was a database administrator that held the keys to setting up and maintaining the database. Are you the tools that the database administrator uses to set up and maintain these databases that power all the software we know in the cloud?
It's a great question, right? So, after the advent of the cloud, the role of the DBA or the database administrator has changed quite a bit. See, previously, they would do all the button clicking and the setting up and all those basic stuff. But now, after the cloud, they've all leveled up. So essentially, they are not in the business.
It's part of your AWS subscription. You set one up and, it figures itself.
Yeah. So basically what happens is the software sort of helps you get everything set up and laid out. And the database administrators now are focused on the more nuanced aspects, like, how do you do query tuning? How do you identify problem queries? How do you scale? So in some ways, it's good. It's sort of leveling up the DBAs. But essentially, our software becomes a companion for these DBAs. Now, let's say, for example, they decide, I want to deploy like a high availability Postgres cluster on Azure, right? So it takes out all the nuances of it, all the details they don't have to worry about. So the system sets everything up and it's set from a gold image, so it comes up the same way every time. And essentially, it handles all these infrastructure tasks for them. And then it gives them various tools to monitor the databases, to identify problem queries. And essentially, right, our job is to make the DBA's life easier. Or in
Yeah.
some cases, or in a lot of the cases, like customers we work with, there is no DBA. It's essentially like a tech guy. And, he's not a database expert, but his server is not responding and he needs to know what's going on. So for example, I'll give you an example of this is a common problem we had with our customers, and so we decided to solve it. So we built this thing called a slow query analyzer, right? So if you go look at all the support tickets from ScaleGrid over the last 5 years, the number one you get is, hey, my database is slow, something is wrong with the server. But the reality is 99.9% of the time, there's nothing wrong with the server. It's the query, right? And I get it. Database queries are complex. People miss indexes or it's difficult to write indexes, right? So essentially, we built this nice tool that basically gives out a bubble chart with essentially all the queries and how much time they're taking. And when you show it to people, you can see the click, like, aha, so that's what's going on. So that's the first step. Now, the second step is once they figure out what's going on, they want to know, how do I fix it? And it's not always easy because, database queries, I don't know if you have worked in the database world.
Black art, right.
Oh my God, they can be like, immense and complicated. So that's where our expertise comes in. So that's the second part of, the ScaleGrid's value proposition is that, hey, we are here and we are experts. So, if you have some...
So people experts that can help.
Yeah, but we don't really do services. We just do it as a service to our customers, right? Support, yeah. So we say, hey, if you really have problems, our people will look at it and will help you, right? We're not, we're not a services play, but I feel like we added a lot of value to customers, and that helped with our retention as well. People start to rely on you. They trust you as a partner, as a platform partner, and so they take you everywhere they go. As they write new apps and new databases, new different kinds of databases, they take you along. So I think that's been a really important aspect of ScaleGrid as well.
And you sold to these sophisticated developers and database administrators that power all the software. You sold to the developers and not business users.
Yes.
Not the CFO or the CTO,
So I did like our strategy was like a ground up strategy. We started with the smaller developers, right? Essentially, these are people developing their own apps, and they don't have time to understand and set up, high availability, backup, and all those things, and monitoring. So they just want a database and they want to use it, right? And they want it to work, right? So we started off with that, and then over a period of time, as you get more awareness, we started moving up SMB, and then because the product was so good, over a period of time, large enterprises, started to come to us, saying, "Hey, we have this performance problem, and we are unable to solve it on RDS or other platforms. Can you help us do it?" And then we were deploying large 60, 70 node clusters in Amazon and other clusters as well. So it is.
Wow.
If you are going to bootstrap, I think this is something to keep in mind that it doesn't make sense to go for the enterprise customer directly. In some ways, you kind of have to grow organically. Product wise, it's a bit of everything, right? There's product, there's marketing, there's support. All these things have to kind of grow in place for you to be ready to serve that enterprise customer. And in my opinion, if you do it right, in 5-6 years of deliberate growth in product and support and marketing, you'll be ready for the enterprise customer, and they will come to you. Is my learning from that process.
That's your marketing strategy for them. It's much less expensive to wait for them to come to you than to go, knock on the doors of enterprise as well.
For sure.
You were bootstrapped. Did you have any outside funding at all?
So I went to an accelerator called AngelPad in San Francisco in early days of my startup. And as part of that, I got about $70,000 of angel funding from that.
Okay, that accelerator deal where a little bit of equity, a little bit of, starter funding. Yeah, right. And all of that. And you sold the company, or the majority of the company, to private equity, growth equity partners, Spotlight Equity Partners, in middle of 2021, so right in the heyday of the COVID era. What can you say about that acquisition?
Yeah, it was an interesting acquisition. I was actually not in the market to sell the company. Yeah. And, I got an unsolicited offer for the company from another strategic. And, at that point, I went out and I worked my network, and I found a banker. I think you know him as well. I worked with Gaurav Basan from Allied Advisors.
We just had him on the podcast 2 weeks ago. Another person I met at the Lighter conference.
Yeah, and he was great for me. He sort of walked me through the process, And so the goal was I didn't want to go into the process with just one buyer, so we wanted to build like a portfolio of buyers. So essentially, that's when we started the process, and that's he brought in Spotlight Equity as well. So it's a fairly grueling process because these are private equity firms, right? They will, they are finance geeks, right? They will look under every stone, and it was a fairly grueling process. And for me, it was extra hard because it happened during COVID. So the initial discussions were happening, and they were going positive, and then all of a sudden, COVID hit. Everybody was like, "Oh, baby!" First of all, they have to look after their existing companies, right? They're like, we got to make sure our existing companies don't die out, right? And then they said, okay, let's keep in touch and let's talk. So nothing really moved for about, I would say, 8 or 10 months after that. And luckily, that year was one of our best years ever. Because, everything moved online, right? More and more apps, and everybody needed databases, right? So our revenues were like going through the roof that year. Right. And so that was a very good context in which to have. Sometimes a lot of life is timing and luck.
Yeah, a little luck.
Yeah. So that was a very good context in which to have the discussion. And then next time they came back, they looked at the numbers and they're like, wow, this stuff is, it's can be made to work. Right. So that was it was a very interesting process. I would say about a year and a half process. A lot of good learning. And what I would tell sort of in developers or founders is that the exit process is almost as hard as the founding process. If not harder.
The other side of the coin, right? Yes.
If not harder, right?
Yes.
And like anything you're doing for the first time, it's you need a lot of luck, and you're probably going to screw it up, right? So get a lot of good advisors, and then hope for the best.
Well, we'll come back to the acquisition, the sale of your company, and a little bit more of that process there. How big was your company when you sold it in 2021?
So we were about 20 people, and and we were distributed between India and Vancouver. That's what.
Yes. And can you say about how much revenues or customers you had? You had just doubled.
Yeah. So I would say I can't go to the exact specifics, but I would say we're between 4 and 8 million in revenue.
Okay, great. And it was kind of high time. So this is not a public. This information isn't public, but it was a high time, and you were growing fast, and it was a hot prospect in the COVID era. So you probably got a little excitement around the deal, and I'm sure you did pretty well here. You sold, I guess, a majority of your company to a private equity type buyer.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And are you still with the company, or did you transition your way out? And
so I'm still on the board of the company. I don't work on any day-to-day. I'm not an employee of the company anymore, but I'm still on the board.
And you still own some shares of the company,
yes,
and
I do.
Want to support it as much as possible. Okay, very exciting. So you didn't grow it to be this massive company, and 20 employees in a hot zone here. Was it a very efficient company, meaning, let's say, profitable, because you were efficient on your customer acquisition, efficient on your employees?
Yeah.
Right?
I would say it was incredibly efficient, right?
Yes.
Because, in terms of revenue and employees and their location, we were incredibly efficient.
Well, I guess that's the nature of your software is we help database administrators and that all the problems around it to be incredibly efficient, right?
The database business is a really big business. Like it's 120 billion odd business, right? Even small niches in that business are 100 million business.
Yes,
and those are the sort of markets that I like. These big markets, that people consider like almost done. Right, but they're never done because there are all these small niches where a bootstrapper can go in and he can build a really good different mousetrap for that niche. That's going to be worth 100 million. It's just the nature of the business. So these are the sort of markets that I like. And that's one of the reasons I'm working in the PaaS market in my next startup, because I feel like it's very similar to where the database market was maybe 10 years ago.
Okay, so you were selling these administration efficiency tools in the database market and in the platform as a service, PaaS. What is a platform as a service, and what kind of tools and technologies surround that? Is AWS a platform as a service, or?
So I would say AWS. AWS is many things, right? I would say EC2 is a infrastructure as a service. Okay.
Okay.
And they have something called Beanstalk on top of EC2, which is a platform as a service. Okay.
I see.
And think of a platform as a service as something think of it as a layer that helps developers easily deploy, upgrade, and manage their applications. Okay.
Right.
And now
Yeah.
I'm going to spill the beans a little bit, even though it's not public. And essentially,
Ah.
what I want to do is I want to redefine this PaaS layer. See, PaaS traditionally has dealt with infrastructure. It takes away infrastructure work from the developers. So all you have is your code, and they deploy it and they scale it and everything. Now, what I want to do is I want to take this to the next level. And essentially, if you look at sort of any sort of developer building any applications, about 30 to 40% of what the code that is written is boilerplate code, right? It's very important. Like, for example, authorization, authentication, login, monitoring. It's very important code. If you get it wrong, you're done. You're toast. But if you get it right, you get no points for it. Okay. So, I call this like undifferentiated heavy lifting, and 30 to 40% of your code is that. So in my new startup, I'm targeting those infrastructure pieces, and I'm saying those should be part of the infrastructure as well. So as a developer, you shouldn't need to worry about it. And again, I don't want to go too much into it because when I'm ready, I will explain more details on it.
Well, very exciting. And, a real deep developer working on the deep tools and the modern layers as they're coming here. Let's just go back here. You've been a developer for a long time, and you were, you came up through the ranks at Microsoft for years and years in let's say the 2000s and, up to 2010. What kind of things did you work on at Microsoft?
Yeah, Microsoft was a great place for me to work. I loved it. And I started off as a junior developer. I think it's called a level 59 or something. That's the lowest level to start off with, right? So I basically worked my way through the ranks there. And I learned a lot of engineering there. And very intense, very, very good engineering learning. In the beginning, I worked on some backup products. And then I worked on virtualization products, the Hyper-V and the Virtual Machine Manager. And then I was one of the early guys in Azure. So I worked on the Azure virtual networks and getting everything set up. So from a engineering perspective, it was an amazing experience. You get to learn a lot. You get to be with a lot of other engineers. But from a business perspective, it doesn't teach you anything because you have no exposure.
It's a big company. It's a monopoly. There's other people doing it. Yeah.
And that's kind of what I expected. I felt like I was ready to sort of branch out on my own, and I wanted to build something on my own. I wanted to learn marketing. I wanted to learn sales, and I wanted to see what it's like to basically build your own company. And that was one of the reasons I stepped out of Microsoft and built this database company.
And is that a typical thing at Microsoft? We say Microsoft is tech, and Seattle, there's a startup town there, but probably most developers at Microsoft saying, this is fun. They pay me really well. It's a guaranteed business. The stock is great, right? Most developers don't leave to go start their bootstrapped adventure, right?
They give you just enough money to be comfortable.
Yes.
So not many people do that, but it's getting better. It's getting better. More people are taking more chances. Because at the end of the day, this is, in my opinion, this is the strength of the economy, right? Where when people go out and build companies, nations are built on that. So you want more people to go out, start more businesses, build new ideas. I love it.
Oh, that's right. Well, that's great. So what was it that you saw as a developer inside of Microsoft that was a problem you thought you could go solve?
Yeah, the database problem is kind of pervasive, right? Like you said, essentially, every app needs a database, right? And so in Azure, when we used to ship these apps, we had this specialized sort of database organization or these DBAs, and we had to basically book time with them. And obviously, everybody wanted time with them, and so we would be in a queue for like a week or two, and then they would help set up the servers. They would bless your design. They would bless your schema. They would, bless your backup. And then you would go live. So the whole process would take about 2 or 3 weeks. And it was really inefficient, right? And I felt as a developer, that whole process was automatable, right? With the right skill set. And so, this idea had been brewing in my mind for a while, and I was already working on all these different things. And so I was kind of ready. And then when the cloud stuff first came out and when I saw RDS, that's when I knew, okay, this is what the future is going to be like. This is the future of how people are going to work with databases.
was a new frontier. Cloud was a new frontier and was a
Yeah,
shift in
sure.
the game, and you could, surf a new wave, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, I
But,
definitely surfed that wave. But initially
yeah.
I picked the wrong wave. So
And what was that wave that you was
yeah, and
was
this is probably like a carryover from my Microsoft days where I wanted to target enterprise customers first.
of course,
So I
right.
figured,
Easy.
hey, RDS has got this cloud database thing covered. So let me go do databases for enterprises who can deploy it on premise on their VMware infrastructure, right? It was a great idea, but it was just, I was not ready for it, and the market was not ready for it. And I also learned
Did you actually try to sell it and, get nowhere
yeah,
or
I mean, it
something?
was a harsh
Okay.
lesson, man. These enterprises, they look at you funny when they're like, "We're not going to buy a product from us, one-person developer company, right?" It doesn't work that way, right?
Yeah.
It took me about a year to learn that lesson. Like, this is not going to go anywhere. And at that point, so I decided to pivot to the edges. So at that point, the harsh lesson I learned was people will buy something even from a one-person company if it's going to save their lives. Okay. Now,
Yeah, there you go.
so I thought about, okay, now where can I go where I can be really useful, right? And that's where I saw in the edge cases, there are these new databases coming up and people are struggling with them, these NoSQL databases like,
Right.
Mongo, Redis, and Cassandra. And people know enough about them that they want to use them, but they don't have the expertise when they get stuck with them, right? And they
Ah,
won't care if you're a one-person company, they'll still hire you because they need the help, right?
yeah.
So that was a big sort of realization I hit.
How did you survive that year? Was that on your savings and you're selling a little bit of Microsoft stock and you were building this yourself and you built some tooling and tried to sell it? Is that how you survived with a
Yeah.
little
So,
savings?
initially when I started off, I made sure I could survive for 2.5 years
Yeah.
because, that's really what it takes, right? I mean, if you can't
Yeah.
survive on your own, I would say if you can't survive on your own for 3 years, you shouldn't be starting anything. Because as a bootstrapper, it's going to take you 2 to 4 years to sort of find your feet. And,
Yeah.
no, I can guarantee you whatever you start off with is going to be wrong. It's just a
Yeah.
question of how wrong it's going to be, right? Right. So it took me about I would say a little more than 2 to 3 years to get a little bit of revenue. Yeah, but once I figured out the cloud and once I figured out Mongo, then it was like basically a linear growth after that. I just kept investing, kept getting better, kept adding more databases, and then I made enough money to hire one developer. So then that developer wrote more code, made more money. Then we hired the second developer, and so on.
And so how many customers did you need to sell to get one more developer?
So it really depends on the customer, right? But on average, our customers were paying us about $500 a month. So not many. So it depends on where you hire your developers from.
Yeah, where you hire,
Yeah.
right?
So
Yeah.
let's say you hire somewhere in South America or you hire in India. For every 4 or 5 customers, you could bring on a new developer,
There you go.
right?
So let's talk about that early stage,
Yeah.
right? You were the corporate refugee, you left, very smart guy, and everybody's watching what you're doing. Is it okay? Is he going to survive? Is he going to come back? And you're out there, you built the product yourself and you tried to sell it to enterprise. That didn't really work. What was the hardest part of getting to, the place where revenue started catching and you started going? Was it product side or was it selling or marketing or just the founder ability to say, let's focus over here? What was the hardest part for you?
I think everything was very hard, right?
Okay, right.
So
Well,
uh, I think, see, basically, a founder's job is basically to do two magic tricks, right?
yeah,
Right. One of the magic tricks could be to raise money, right? Which is essentially a
yeah,
magic trick, right? Because people are giving
yeah.
you money when you don't have anything, right? So it is a magic trick, right? The second magic trick the founder has to do is to get customers, right?
Mhm.
And there is so much that goes into getting these customers. And I didn't realize that because I was just an engineer. Right? I built stuff for a
Yeah.
living. And building stuff is probably about, I would say, 30-40% of the way to revenue,
Mhm.
right? So the harsh lessons for me were, how do you do marketing, right? Like, how do you tell people what you're building in a way that they can understand and appreciate what you're building? And that's not easy at all, right?
Right.
You have to put yourself in the customer's shoes. You have to understand their problems, and you have to message your solution in a way that it solves their problems. right?
And you were selling to people that you knew. You were that kind of person,
Yes.
right? You weren't selling to an HR department. You were selling to other developers deep in the stack,
Yeah.
working on really hard
Yeah.
things that you knew you've been working on those things. But even then, it was still hard to find the right mix of which database platform and which tools.
Mhm. But
Yeah,
what I
great.
would say is it was very hard, but I had an unfair advantage in that I was selling to myself, basically, right?
Yes.
That I was selling to people who were just like me. So that's what I had to do, just put myself.
And even then, it took you a while to find the
Even that
right
it took you.
version of it. Yeah.
So the lesson for me was when you bootstrap and you work on stuff you're really familiar with. Because let's say tomorrow I want to start a new job raising money for a PE company or something like that. I'm not going to do very well on that.
Yeah.
It's just really hard to be outside sort of your area of expertise.
That's great. So you wandered in the wilderness. Were you in Silicon Valley when you were doing that, or were you still up in Redmond?
Yeah, I was still up in Redmond early,
Yeah.
early part of my company. I spent 2-3 years there. All the product was most of the product was built there. And then I got into the AngelPad accelerator, and then I came down to San Francisco, spent about, I think, one fall here. And
Yeah.
that was an amazing experience, just being.
So AngelPad, did they have their own facility and bring in mentors and take you through the program as most accelerators do?
Yeah, very, very typical accelerator, based in the Bay Area, ex-Google guys. So they
Yeah.
had a lot of good contacts in the angel community in the Bay Area. So you got to talk to a lot of these angel investors. And the best part of it was all the other founders. There were 10 other founders. That really blew my mind, because these are founders from all around the country, right? And these are really good people. Some companies are doing really well. Some companies are really early. Some companies are like me in the middle, trying to figure out what to do, right? Just learning all these founders, the way they operate, the way they are building their companies, the way they are marketing their companies, and the way they are doing go to market. That was a real eye opener for me. And I would say that really is what sort of pushed me to the next level as a founder.
Was the go-to-market emphasis in, the puzzle, understanding the puzzle better there, or?
Yeah, I think the main emphasis. Okay, the main emphasis there was always fundraising, right?
I see.
Because everybody here in.
That's a message for everyone.
Yeah.
Accelerators are there to help you, but they're really there to find deals they can invest in and help them go.
So it's
right?
basically
Like Y
fundraising.
Combinator.
Yeah. So that's the fundraising, right? But all the founders are always doing everything, right? They are fundraising, they are building product, they are getting customers,
Yes.
and they're making sales calls. I had never made a sales call till then, but I would watch these founders around me, like everybody picking up the phone and they're doing all these cold calls. That was, interesting. Then I watched them do that's where I learned how to do Google Ads, because a couple of guys were really good at Google Ads, right? And then
And you chose Google Ads versus getting on the phone, cold
yes,
calling or something like that.
that was an easy choice. Huh? So I had, I could not do a cold call. I struggled with it. And,
Yeah, of course.
So I chose Google Ads, and that's how we found our first 10 customers. Right?
Okay, great.
And Google Ads are really good at getting started and identifying what is going on, but they can be very pricey. So, for example, especially if you're in a niche, in a good market like databases, they could be like $5 or $10 a click. It's really expensive, right? So it's not sustainable over the long run, but it's very good for putting out feelers and testing things, see what works, what doesn't work. And so essentially, I started with Google Ads. Took some of my founder peers' help. It's not Google Ads is not complicated, right? You can get started. You can, but getting past a particular level is very hard in Google Ads, right? Once you get to a level, you're going to saturate, right? So you got to be careful about spending too much money on it. Get to a decent point, and then you understand where all the money is, where all the traffic is. What is the cost per click? Everything. Once you understand all that, that's really where the long game comes in. And the long game really is SEO. And even today, in today's AI world, it's still very relevant, right?
Yes.
And what I tell all Bootstrap founders is, this is a game you can really win, and you can really play and win. The reason is, even somebody with a lot of money, you cannot throw money at SEO and expect to do well, because it's still going to take a long time. And most people who are on venture timelines, they don't have unfortunately, the time for all their SEO strategies to sort of mature.
Uh-huh.
Like, for example, if you start working on a keyword today and you start generating content, it might take you 2-3 years before you're at number 1 or number 2, right? Most people who have raised external capital don't have the bandwidth to be patient for that long. They need to have results, right? And it's a business, right?
Yeah.
So they need to have results, and SEO, I feel, is like a bootstrapper's like secret weapon. If as a founder, if you're very diligent about it, and if you understand, again, you have to understand it well, right? You have to understand, what are all your keywords? What is your high priority, medium priority, low priority keyword? What is the top of the funnel? What is bottom of the funnel? And then once you understand the traffic for each keyword, then you can start generating content for it over a period of time. And then how do you refresh the content? How do you do variations of the content? What are the different forms of content you can generate? Once you have something that works, you can distribute it in like 20 different forms, right?
Yeah.
So there's just so much stuff you can do. It's like never ending, right? And as an engineer, I really enjoy it, because SEO really is an engineer. It's marketing, but
It's a technical puzzle.
it's
Yes.
a technical puzzle. So I really
Yeah.
enjoy it. And we spent like, oodles and oodles of time on SEO. And I had a marketing team of about 4 people at the end, which for a 20-person company is really large, right? Because we had 0 sales.
Yeah.
So we were heavy on marketing, and marketing was mostly SEO, right? So we would have these keywords, we would have generate all this content, and most of our content came in-house. And
Yeah.
that's really important as well. You can't have AI writing your content, or you can't farm it out to external writers. You have to use sort of your own experiences, and the content has to be very authentic and original, right?
Yeah.
Once you do all that and you continue to play this game for a year or 2 years, you will start to rise in the rankings. And we were like number 1 in like Mongo hosting, Postgres hosting, Redis hosting,
Oh.
and all these important keywords, and we were getting traffic from there.
This podcast is brought to you by my friends at Designly. If you're a non-technical founder with an up-and-running SaaS business, but your first product and dev partner aren't keeping up, it's time to check out Designly. Designly understands the pains you're experiencing right now. Dev leaders who speak in jargon and put you off, MVPs that went live and face technical problems and UX issues, and missed expectations all around. Designly's mission is to help non-technical software founders build great products with clarity, confidence, and peace of mind by serving as your fully outsourced engineering team. Designly becomes your trusted product partner, working with you every week as your dedicated team. They have partnered with over 200 non-technical and practical founders in the last 12 years. Designly knows how to turn that crazy product stress into calm and successful software launches. Check out their success stories from founders like you who've been there. It all starts with a free 1-week audit where they review your product's code, design, and roadmap to uncover what's working, what's broken, and what's next. Check out designly.co/practical. That's designli.co/practical to talk to them and see how they can help you move faster and sleep better. So you went through the AngelPad accelerator and you basically learned, there's a whole game and different ways to do it, of getting customers and marketing, sales, going to market. But you didn't take any funding. Was that a strange thing? Did you have to resist the urge, or nobody wanted to fund you, or or you just decided, I don't want to play that game?
It was a little bit of both, right? I wasn't ready as well because, I hadn't figured out I knew I wanted to build a database as a service, but I hadn't figured out my hook yet. And where do I come in? Where do I add value? At that point, I was still in the enterprise database as a service sort of stage.
Yes.
And, I was getting the inkling that this is not the right thing, but I didn't know what the right thing was at that point.
Right.
Yet. So in some ways, things worked out for the good in the long run. It's good I didn't, raise any money, but I learned some good lessons and give me some time. And then I was able to figure out what the right thing to build was.
And did you play the marketplace game? This is great for practical founders. You go to the, MongoDB, and were you an add-on product that showed up in their, marketplace or listing of products that work with MongoDB? And did you play that kind of ecosystem game?
We tried a little bit. We tried the ecosystem marketplace on the clouds, the various clouds, like for example,
Yeah.
on Azure and AWS. And for whatever reason, for us, it didn't work at all, right? It was a lot of bureaucracy with those, getting in those cloud marketplaces,
Certified. Yes.
certified, and
Yeah.
it also. And remember, these marketplaces don't have a lot of flexibility, right? If you're just selling one thing, and you can click a button and you deploy it, it works very well. But for example, database, you have to say, hey, I want these servers, I want these to go over there, I want to tune these knobs. Those are not good fit for. So anything that requires maybe some tuning or some knobs will typically not work well in a marketplace sort of setup. So I didn't have any good experience with that.
And so you were, I mean, over time building this up and mm, adding expertise to help. Did you help, do tune some databases yourself in the early days?
Oh yeah,
Did you get yeah,
oh yeah,
all that stuff. Yes. And so you're building this thing up to, to do as much sophistication. You had experts on staff that
yeah,
could help. And,
yeah,
you're right on the front line of this labor turning into automation,
yeah,
software problem.
exactly.
That's amazing. Was it always about the same price point, about 6,000 a year, which is very marketing led and product led, I guess you'd say? Or did you ever, create different editions or products that could sell for much more than that?
Yeah. So our sort of pricing was based on the sizing of the database. So obviously the
Right.
larger database customers paid a lot more than that, but this was kind of our average pricing. And so we didn't really have sort of a specific enterprise offering per se, but just the enterprises deployed the larger sizes for which we charged more. So that's
Okay.
kind of how it.
And was your main growth lever, I understand you're following the trail of your customers and the platforms and where they have a problem and where you have traction. And you guys are developers and you're in conversations with these people,
Yeah.
talking to them. So I'm sure your product evolved quickly.
Uh-huh.
But was the SEO the main lever of your growth to acquire customers over time?
So I would say it's both product and SEO.
Oh, okay.
And the product is interesting in that, see, the most people view product support as like a cost center, right? And in my opinion, that's a big mistake, right? I think a product support, if done well, can be sort of your secret sauce. And not only does it make customers happy, but it also gives you a lot of ideas for product development.
Yes.
So people come in and they tell you what the problems are. And then you have to have the smarts to figure out those problems, use your knowledge, and develop new products. Like, for
Yes.
example, people would always tell us, AWS, hey, the costs are high, but the disks are slow. I don't like the way this performs, right? And, you could just say, hey, this is AWS, this is their disks, and you could just leave it at that, right? But then what we decided was we decided to take that and we built a database queue on AWS where it's a three servers queue where two of the servers are on the local direct attached disks and the third server is on a EBS disk. So essentially you get the performance of a hardware setup and you have the safety of the EBS. And again, we couldn't have made this up, right? Because we
Right.
were not having this problem, but the
Right.
customers were having this problem. So if you really pay attention to support and if you're really engaged, you can get a lot of very good product ideas from your support.
Even though you had a lower price point, you didn't have salespeople, right?
No sales.
But you engage with them in deep conversations and will even help you with your problem in the support side of things to get that knowledge from
Yeah.
what they really want
I
there.
think we overspent on support, and in that we
Yeah.
had a lot of agents, but I felt it was an investment, right? Like for
Yeah.
example, we had live chat, so customers would come in and our guys, and we didn't have a dedicated live chat. All the developers would rotate, right?
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
I would do live chat support for like
Yeah.
one day a week. I would do it, right? In fact,
Yeah.
I loved it because you get to intimately interact with customers. You get to see what is going on. So again, it depends on your audience. And our audience, developers, they don't like to get on the phone, right? They
Yeah.
will not get on the phone. They will pay you, but
Yeah.
they will not get on the phone, right? So they love the live chat. So we used live chat, right?
Okay, great.
So then they would tell us all the problems, and we would try to solve those problems there. And then we would all be, we had an internal Slack. So if somebody got stuck, they would ask for help, and then we would help So it was.
But how does that help? Maybe that helps the long-term customer
Uh-huh.
value and the retention and their happiness and maybe want to pay more, revenue retention. But how does that help in the marketing? Is it they were so pleased they couldn't help but tell other people on all the forums and
Yeah.
other things like that? Or
So what we did was, every time we had a good support experience, we had like a sheet where the support engineer would drop in the name of the customer, and then I would go look through it, and very quickly within the next day or two we would follow up with that customer, and we would do like a case study, right? And we would tell them
a quote case study, or like a
like a small
or
case study, like a small
oh,
like
yeah,
we would interview them, and then we
yeah.
would make a case study, and we would also
Oh,
offer them some discounts as well and say, hey, we love
oh,
working
nice.
with you. And most people, once they've had the good experience, they would immediately bite on it. Like,
Yeah.
here's how ScaleGrid helped reduce their database performance by 20%, or reduce their query time by 20%. It's a small, very targeted case study. Is not these huge, humongous 30-page case studies, but a one pager. We focus on
Yeah.
it being a one pager to take one problem and say, okay, this is how they solve the problem. So we built up this huge sort of collection of case studies, 30, 40 case studies, by going after these customers who had a good support
Mm,
experience. And the
wow.
other interesting aspect of that is every support ticket is a potential blog post for us. And that's
Yes.
really how we generated our support topics.
So customer-driven content,
Yeah. For
if you would
example, if
say,
we would
right?
get a lot of
Yeah,
tickets saying, hey, I'm having a lot of trouble paging through my database in Mongo,
yeah.
right? And that was one of our first blogs. And that blog today, 10 years later, still brings in customers.
Well, that's classic in the developer tools market, right? The use case,
Mhm.
what does a developer do when they get stuck? The first thing they do is
Yeah.
type it in
Yeah.
and see what they get, and somebody's already helping,
Yeah.
and you created the opposite side of that use case, I'm having a problem
Yeah.
kind of content.
So we use support to basically generate blog ideas, generate
Ah,
product ideas, and then of course case studies and so on. So it was if you use your customer support well, it can be an incredibly valuable resource.
yeah, strategic
Yeah,
there. And so this was you were starting to grow. You started the company. I think you left in 2011, and 2012 is
yeah,
the official start year, and this is further down the line. SaaS is picking up speed, and you're picking up speed. Was this a slow growth company in your mind, or were you growing at the pace you wanted to grow?
I think it was definitely a slow growth company. And one of the reasons for that was I was doing everything, right? And
Ah,
I was doing everything. And obviously, I was not very good at a lot of things, right? Uh, so over a period of time, I hired marketing help. That helped a lot, right?
okay.
But one of the regrets I have is I should have invested more in other areas. I should have brought on more people to help with sales and marketing, and maybe some engineering as well. And I
Ah,
could have been a little bit more strategic and hands off
yeah,
and let things move a little faster, right?
yeah,
But this is where that you have the downside of bootstrapping, right? Because there's never enough cash reserve for you to take a risk, right?
right.
Because you don't want to leave enough. You are always spending. You're always on the margins, right? So I didn't figure. I feel like I could have figured next time around. I should figure out that problem a little better. Build a
Uh-huh.
better team instead of just trying to do everything yourself. Because if you're trying to do everything yourself, I think you can build a 10 million business, but that's about it. You're going to saturate after that. And you're also going to be very burnt out after it.
So is it you were just the smartest guy in the room that had this problem? You were still coding, I'm sure,
Yeah.
and taking support calls and doing everything, and wasn't a very high price point
Yeah.
enterprise kind of play. So revenue came in very small bites, and you wanted to invest in engineering and support. So you were going to do the rest of these things. That's another way to invest is
Yeah.
I'm going to do support, or I'm going to do marketing so you can do support, kind of thing. So, but, was it just like, being too frugal and,
Yeah.
too clinging to it? Yeah,
Yeah.
something like
I
that?
think I was too frugal looking back at it.
Yeah,
I think I could have taken a lot more risk even with the revenue stream that I had. I
yeah,
could have taken a lot more risks, right?
yeah.
But this is the thing, as a founder, you're already so stressed doing so many different things. I didn't step back and take a look at it, right?
Okay. Well, you had moved to Silicon Valley at some point, right? I could think after your AngelPad
Yeah.
accelerator,
Yeah.
something like that. So you were in Silicon Valley. Everybody's working up to their ears.
Yes.
and so forth. How long did you go without really paying yourself a salary?
So I think I didn't really pay myself a salary for about, 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And then it was a token salary.
Yeah,
But then
yeah.
it kept growing. I made sure, every 6 months, depending on the revenue, I kept growing it.
Yeah.
And I think within 5 or 6 years, I was back at my Microsoft salary.
Okay. It only took you 5 or 6 very hard
Very hard
years
years.
to get back to that kind of thing.
Yeah,
And, so you fought for your independence, you
exactly.
invested in it, and you
Mhm.
valued that.
Yeah.
When did it feel, if it ever did it ever feel like you were not completely stressed and doing all the jobs and working hard, or did you ever kinda get over that hill as well?
It's funny you should ask that. It's just that I was in paradise. I just didn't know it. It was everything you can dream of, right? I had running my own business.
Yeah.
Uh,
Revenues,
Revenue is
customers,
growing. I have a
employees,
decent
yeah.
team, but I was stressed like crazy, right?
Ah,
Because I think I wasn't. I didn't deal well with the organization and the growth. And like I said, I was trying to do everything. So that's my lesson from that: is you got to delegate a lot
mhm,
more, and you don't need to be as frugal. Even on Bootstrap revenues, you can still hire a team and you can delegate more.
yeah.
So I think you can, if you're able to cross that chasm, I think even a bootstrap business can grow 50 million and beyond easy.
Yeah, that's right. Well, so you've got this thing up and running, you got customers going.
Yeah.
Was it just every year for a few more years headed towards your exit in 2021 was more SEO, more database connections, a few more, another engineer, another support person, another marketing person. Was it mostly incremental or, was there any other breakthroughs there that pivotal moments?
There's always, interesting pivotal moments. Like, for example, we started to do physical conferences. Like, we started to go to, database conferences, right? And
Ah,
we would do
okay.
like one or two every quarter, and those were incredibly valuable as well. Because once you have a booth at a conference and people see you, it sort of registers in their mind, right? And as you keep going back again and again, and I think what the term is like, you need about 7 contacts before people
Right.
start to really believe you as an entity,
Remember.
right?
Yeah, that's right.
So we decided to
Was
do.
that hard for you to do because trade shows are expensive and taking the team out there and all that time as a
Yeah,
doing non-engineering things,
exactly.
and then you got there and said, "Wait a minute, these are all database people in one room," you
Yeah.
know?
In the beginning, I felt like I was cheating. That I'm spending all this money. I'm going on a jaunt here, right? But but then once I got there, once you start to see the crowd, you realize these are the sort of people you should be talking to, right?
Okay,
It was a lot of
great.
fun. I really enjoyed that part of it. And
Yeah,
then the other interesting thing was where the company came a full circle. And once the company had matured and we started going all these places, we started getting requests to deploy ScaleGrid on VMware. You know, and the
for bigger
for
companies.
bigger
Yeah.
company. And the first time I got this request, I almost like fell off the chair, right? Because this is this is what I wanted to do in the first place, and nobody wanted it, right?
You didn't believe me before. Yeah,
Exactly. So that was a fun moment, and working with all these large enterprises, trying to understand their infrastructure, and it's a very different process, right? See,
yeah.
in a normal SMB sale, you make one sales call, 40 minutes, you answer their questions, and within the next hour, they'll put in the credit card and they'll buy,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Whereas the enterprise sale is like, you have like 30 meetings over the next year, and even then they
One
might
by one.
consider
Yeah.
you. They might consider
Yeah,
you for the next year. So it's a different world out there, right?
yeah.
It was good learning. But again, I don't think there are any sort of dull days, as a bootstrap founder, right?
Right.
Everything is every day something is going up in smoke or something new or interesting is coming in. There are no boring days for a bootstrap founder.
Were you, no boring days, including weekends kind of founder?
I think once you're a founder, you're just doing stuff, right? You don't think about it as
Yeah.
a weekday or a weekend, or you
Yeah,
don't
there
think
you go.
about
Yeah.
stuff like
Uh-huh.
work-life balance and things like that, right? There's work to
Yeah.
be done and you do it, and when you're tired and you're not feeling energized, you go hang out with your family and you do your stuff. I just work all the time.
So is that part of the reason, you grew a company, it's getting a little bigger, and then you happen to be in COVID, and then it surges up again, and you have a surge, but somebody comes out of the blue and says, "We'd like to buy you." and you think, "That's interesting." Some founders kind of say, "Not yet. I'm not big yet." But were you a little tired and frazzled and stressed, and you said, "Okay, I could do this now."
Yeah,
Is that
I
a
think it's a
is that
little.
a reason?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. First thing was, I was probably a little burnt out from all the everything that
Yeah,
was going on, and second, I probably realized that I needed some help to build the enterprise side of things.
right.
After having
Oh, it's a
done
whole
one.
different investment. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
mhm,
huge investment of time, right? And I figured this the way I'm doing it, I will not be able to do enterprise sales, right?
yeah,
So that realization dawned on me. So if you have to build a sales team, it can be a very expensive proposition. It's a very hard enterprise
yeah,
sales team for a bootstrap startup is almost a no go, right?
yeah.
I realized that hey, I have to bring in some extra capital, or I have to bring in people who know how to do these things, right? So it was a little bit of both of these things, and I decided, okay, maybe it's time to go on chapter two and see how things are going to work.
Did you have a senior team then that you could rely on to run the business, and when you weren't there or, the starting of that, or
Mhm.
did you not get there?
I don't think I got there. I was
Yeah.
on the way there, but I don't think I
Mhm.
got there. No, I had some
Yeah,
senior
right.
people on the engineering side. They were doing all the handling, all the engineering work, some of the marketing. But I think I could have done a better job. Even with the financial constraints that I had, I think we could have done a better job of building a sort of an executive team per se to handle all these. And that's one of my lessons as a bootstrap founder from the first time is that I got to build a better executive team next time around.
And that's a trick,
Yeah.
and it's a magic trick in its own. Doesn't
Yes.
always work, and it's
Yes.
not very
Yes.
easy and all of that.
Yes.
So in 2020, you received this unsolicited offer and you said, "Okay, let me hire, Gaurav Bhasin of Allied, Advisors as a M&A investment banker, advisor to help you shop it." And, you made the pitch and got your data room and did all that kind of
Yeah.
thing. You know, why were people interested? Was it, "We have a big database platform, you have tools, we'll just buy this thing and integrate it," or, you know, financial buyers don't usually buy smaller companies on that side here. What were people interested in generally when you shopped it?
Yeah. Again, it comes down to markets, right? You always have to play in good markets, right? And people are always enamored with large markets like database markets, right? And it's always a
It could be huge, yes,
yeah,
uh-huh.
it's always a platform play. And even the financial buyers who are looking to come in and buy you, right? They're like, hey, can we buy this and make it into a platform and then bring on other companies, stack on top, and build a giant, right? That's why it all comes down to like you always have to fish in good waters, right? It doesn't matter. You
That's
have to be
true.
a good fisherman, but if you don't fish in good waters, you're not going to catch any fish.
And what was Spotlight eventually acquired you? You got through the painful due diligence and, the back and forth and all of that crazy stuff. Did they wanna make you a centerpiece platform that they could build around and grow a big database tools kinda company,
Yeah,
DBAS company?
that was the kind of the goal to take ScaleGrid, use it as a platform, and then maybe do some side-on acquisitions and sort of build like a database sort of DBAs or a database management company.
And so what are they doing with it now? You're no longer there. There's a new CEO. Now there's a senior management team. There's a CMO and a CTO and a
Yeah.
CSO and a sea of everything,
Yes.
a sea of executives. Well, what are they focused on now that, is either the same or different than the story that you told a few years ago? It's been a few years now.
Yeah. So essentially, the product wise, all they are still interested in all the databases, but they are definitely interested on the enterprise side of things, and that's all PE firms are interested on the enterprise side of things, right? How do you build partner sales? How do you build enterprise sales? How do you build like a lead generation team, right? How do you build SDR team, right? Those are all the things that they're working on, and again, those are all things that take time and money.
So are they doing that, out of the revenues of the company, the bootstrapped approach, or are they doing that with some investment in the company to kind of grow ahead and get that layer, that foundation layer for that next level enterprise push?
And it's a bit of both, right? And I think in all good companies, it's always a bit of both, right? So you have to invest a little bit, and you have to use your existing revenues as well.
Okay. So you're still on the board. How
Mhm.
did that go when you were at first running the company? Now you got you were this independent, do it all, fought for your independence guy. And now you have financial board members, from Spotlight to there. And then you eventually, how did that go at first? Was that a strange world where you had board meetings and board decks and financials and somebody saying, we think you should do this?
I think it's definitely a strange world, right? Because I had been in a world in 10 years where I was not doing many PowerPoint stuff at all, right? I was
Yes,
just
right.
doing engineering and sales and marketing, right?
Yeah.
So just preparing all these decks and presenting them, it was a bit of a change for me, right?
Hmm.
And also, spending time there, what I realized is, I'm more of a execution guy. So I need to have a problem. I think after about 6 months, I know that I started to get the itch again. Right? I know I need a problem. I need to be working on something. I need to be building something. I need to be hands on with something. Right? So
Yeah.
I don't think I'm the sort of guy who can, sit in a board meeting, make a presentation, and then give it to somebody else to execute it. Right? So that's not me. So
And they eventually hired a CEO, Chris Miller, who's been running the company. And did that person have experience in this enterprise database,
yeah.
world, or,
So he
all of
had
that?
he had experience on the enterprise side of things.
Yeah.
So that was one of the reasons they brought him in to help sort of accelerate the push towards enterprise.
Okay. And now you're like, instead of the parent of this company, you're the grandparent. You visit
Yeah.
occasionally, you drop in, you make suggestions, but they don't necessarily have to do it.
Yes.
How does that feel to play that role now?
It does feel a little weird, but
Hmm.
it is part of life, right?
Yeah.
So in some ways, the company is sort of your baby, right? So you have sort of built it, you've sort of grown it to what it is. So to be a little hands off on it is pretty hard.
Yeah.
Uh,
In a totally different phase with a different approach and
yes.
different people and so forth there.
And
So,
the way I reconcile is, I've done my part.
yes.
I've gotten it to
Right.
this level, and I
Yeah.
have done everything I have the skills for, right? So now let other people bring their different skills and let them take it to the next level. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
me. As long as it moves forward, it's okay.
Do you tell yourself the story that you're the builder, the 0 to 1 guy, the engineer to get it up, and then, the operators can take over at some point, right? Before the bureaucrats take over. I mean, or is that something that you can grow past the next time?
I think that's a great question, right? I think, my narrative so far has been that I'm a 0 to 1 guy, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Though I
Yeah.
can I can be the first guy, I can get this product off the ground, I can do the basic marketing and the sales, and I will get you to, like say 5 million or 6 million in revenue.
Right. And almost nobody who has done 10 plus years at Microsoft comes out and is the 0 to 1 guy on the keyboard and, selling and taking the order and doing everything,
Yeah,
right? Hands on keyboards.
so I can definitely do that. But
Yeah.
then the question for me now is, can I take it to the next level, right?
Yeah.
Can I be a
Yeah,
little
of
bit
course.
more hands off, get a hire a more strategic team, and I can help with the strategic decisions, but I don't need to do all the things by myself. So if I can do that, then I can tackle bigger problems. Uh,
Yeah.
because I think in the first startup I became the bottleneck, right?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's really what life is about, right?
That's a great challenge. Yeah.
You move on to your next challenge, right?
Yeah.
So that's the challenge for me with the next company is, how do I build it in a way that I don't become a bottleneck? So I'll
Right.
take all my experiences from the first one, and then maybe, if everything goes well, it'll be a bigger company than the first one.
Yeah. Well, I see that a lot, and it's very typical. And some founders say, that's what I'm good at. I really don't want to like that other phase. So I'm going to just keep be doing my phase. And other founders say, well, that's a new challenge. I've done that. I want to do a new challenge.
Yeah.
And, another reason that we get so attached in the early bootstrap years, and venture funded founders get attached as well, is you don't have a lot of safety net, right? Even VC funded founders don't have a lot of safety net, but now you have money in the bank. You have prize money, right? You have choices. Does that, you know, I don't know if it makes you, people say now they don't have the drive anymore now that you've got, big money in the bank or something like that. But are you able in your mind to take more risks now that you have some money off the table?
I think definitely yes. And I think it's also a personality thing, right? So if you have the drive, you have the drive, right? So it doesn't matter whether you have the money or not, you'll find a way to move
Right.
forward, right? And but I definitely can take sort of more risks in terms of doing hiring a small team, trying some out of pocket ideas, right? And I definitely think it makes it a little easier. And actually, what really helps is you can see around the corner a little bit, right?
Yes.
Because you know what's coming. It's not when you're doing the first time founder, you're like running blind, right? You're running blind through a maze, right? And you just kind of
Yeah.
figuring out as you go. But now, at least in the first, like in the 0 to 6, 7 million range, I know what's coming around the corner, right? I can
Yeah.
look around the corner a little bit. I think the other interesting thing I would like to do better this time is I would like to get better mentors, right? I think
That's
that's sort
right.
of, I sort of vaguely did it on and off in my first startup, but I think in now, let's say, for example, I could get a mentor around sort of enterprise sales and I could start
Yeah.
talking about it. And the important thing about mentorship is that, it has to be sort of a two-way relationship, right? You have to be able to add enough value to your mentor for your mentor to take the time to help you. And those
Right.
sort of,
Because it's an
it's
exchange,
an
right? This
exchange.
isn't
Yes.
a
It's not
paid advisor. This is a mentor there. And, it's one of the superpowers of Silicon Valley is a lot of people are helping a lot of other people,
exactly.
like the Thai organization, for Indian
Mhm.
entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
It's a massive mentoring organization,
Exactly.
right? And so
So,
that's great.
so I think that's an
Well, do you feel like, I don't know, what have you been doing the last few years after you say 2022, 2023, you left the day-to-day operations of the
yeah,
business, spent a
yeah.
couple years. Did you take time off and try to sit still for a minute, or did you, start building right away?
No, I took about a year or so off. Right, I
Oh,
did
great.
a lot of hiking and I do a lot of photography.
Oh,
So
great.
I did a lot of it, and then I got really bored. Right, so
Yeah, the question for practical founders is how long did it take you staring at the beach or play golf or doing photography to before you said, I got to go build something,
1 year, and then I
that
was done.
yes.
Right,
Yeah.
then I was like, my best life is when I'm building something. So,
Yes.
so I started I had this book of ideas, right? I'm always jotting down all these ideas, and I had about 10 or so by then. So I started sort of, throwing them at the wall, see what sticks. And then one of the ideas here was the pass thing. So when I
Yeah.
got to it, I started investigating it. I liked it. I talked to about a few people. I got some feedback, and then I iterated on it. And then at some point, maybe a year ago, I decided, okay, I want to invest in this. I want to build this, see where it goes. So I've been heads down, just coding away.
Coding away. And what is the criteria for you for the next idea? There's a lot of ideas, but, a big market, your sweet spot of tools around these platforms, what else is a criteria for you to get there? Does it have to be product led, SEO driven, the same tactic, or, what other things?
I think the main thing is it's a market you have to be comfortable in. Okay, going to a new market is like, if let's say I wanted to do healthcare today, right? I could make it, maybe, but the odds are I won't, right? So it's important to work in in an area you're really comfortable, you can add value, because ultimately, entrepreneurship is, people complicate it a lot. It's actually very simple. You know, can you build something and add value to people? If you do, they will pay you. So that's really all you have to ask. You don't want to go into all these complicated stuff. Like, can I build something in this space? Will I solve some problems for people, and will they pay me for it? That's really it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Well, everything else is very complicated, but there are laws of nature there, and eventually you have to have employees that fit and, want to contribute there.
Exactly.
And maybe an exit at the end, somebody who says, we want to buy that company or, not. Could you imagine running your company for a good long time is a profitable, fun place to keep building?
Yeah, I think so. Right. Again, in the second company, I haven't decided if I just want to keep running it or whether I want to build and sell. And it's not a decision I need to make right now. But as a founder, what I've realized is, I need to be in a place where I'm solving interesting problems on a daily basis. Right?
There you go.
I need to be building. I need to be solving. And the best place in the world to find interesting problems is to build your own company. Right? Because they come at you like 100 miles an hour. Right?
Yeah.
So
I'm hearing that from your first experience. You saw problems, you experienced the problems, you started with that, but pretty quickly you started listening, right, to your customers who are telling you, "I have this
yeah,
problem, right, and this is going wrong." Do you think it's the same kind of game as hurry up and get out there and they will tell you their problems?
yeah. I think you build the first version of what you have in your mind. And like we said before, it's definitely 100% going to be wrong. It's just a question of how much wrong it is. Like, is it completely wrong, or is it like 30% off base, right?
Yeah.
So once you put something out there, then you can, because you can talk to people with your PowerPoint decks, all you want, and you can get a bunch of feedback. But it's different when you have a product and you ask people to pay to use it. It's a completely different world, right?
Right.
So you have to build
Right.
something basic, just get it out there, let them use it, and then they'll give you feedback, and then you iterate, and then you iterate like crazy, right?
Yes,
Every
right.
week over the next 2 years, right? You ship something every week, every day, maybe, right? And then you
Yeah.
just keep iterating. That's the stuff I love to do, right? As a builder, as a developer, as a programmer, right? This is what I want to do.
Darshan, thanks for sharing that story. Another crazy practical story on the Practical Founders podcast and a successful exit. And now you're, working on the next adventure for you. What advice do you give most often to software founders out there in Silicon Valley and otherwise, engineers that want to quit their job and start a company, people playing in this space? You've done it before. You've successfully sold a company now. What's a typical advice that you give to new founders for how to think about their business?
I don't think there's anything as typical, because all the founder experiences are like so difficult and different. I think the first thing is you have to want to be like an entrepreneur, right? You can't take you can't take random people and make them an entrepreneur. You have to want to be on your own. You have to enjoy the freedom and the risk and the upside that comes with it, and the unmitigated downside as well. So the upside comes with the downside, right? So you have to accept that, right? And you have to be comfortable with it. And secondly, right, you want to be on your own and you want to try things, right? You want to be constantly looking at problems and new solutions. So you want people who like that sort of process, right? Where here's a new problem and here's a new solution. I'm going.
We're excited about the problems.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And,
Not
and
everybody is.
lastly, the most important thing you have to do as an entrepreneur is you have to add value to your customers. And most people forget that. And it's so obvious, but most people forget that, right? Because if you add value to your customers, they will pay you. You might
Yeah.
not figure out a way to extract the money, but eventually you will. But
Yeah.
the first step is you got to add value. And then you
Yeah.
can figure out how to monetize the value.
Great. Well, I really appreciate you sharing that. That's wise general advice from a practical founder. I really appreciate you being on the Practical Founders podcast, Darshan.
Thank you for having me, Greg. Lovely discussion.
Thank you. Thanks for watching this week's interview on the Practical Founders podcast. Be sure to like this episode and subscribe to the Practical Founders YouTube channel to keep up with my weekly in-depth interviews with serious software founders who are building valuable software companies without big funding. You can check out my blog, all the podcast episodes, and information about my Practical Founders CEO peer groups at practicalfounders.com, or message me on LinkedIn if you'd like to connect. See you next week.